He built an empire on fear. She cleaned his floors in silence. But when he saw the bruises, everything changed. This is the story of how a man who destroyed lives became the one person who saved one. And what happened next? No one saw coming. Prepare yourself, because this journey will challenge everything you think you know about power, justice, and redemption. Marcus the Ghost. Valentine didn't become one of the most feared men in Chicago by being soft. Born in the South Side Projects in 1978, he learned early that the world was divided into two kinds of people: those who took and those who got taken from. His mother Linda worked 3 jobs trying to keep him and his younger sister fed. His father? Gone before Marcus could even remember his face. Just another statistic. Another man who couldn't handle the weight of poverty and responsibility. At 8 years old, Marcus watched his mother come home with a black eye. Her manager at the factory had accidentally hit her with a door. That's what she said. But Marcus saw the shame in her eyes. He saw how she flinched when men raised their voices. He saw how the world chewed up people like his mother and spit them out. And something hardened inside him that day. Something that would never soften again. Or so he thought. By 12, Marcus was running packages for the local dealers. Small stuff at first, just enough to help his mother with rent. By 15, he had his own corner. By 18, he had his own crew. And by 25, Marcus Valentine controlled 6 blocks of territory and was pulling in $200,000 a month. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about never being powerless again. It was about making sure no one could ever hurt him or his family the way the world had hurt his mother. Marcus had rules, strict ones. No kids in the business, no hitting women, no selling to pregnant mothers. And absolutely no one disrespected his operation and lived to talk about it. He was ruthless, yes. He had blood on his hands, absolutely. But he had a code. A twisted, violent code, but a code nonetheless. The streets called him the Ghost because he moved in silence. You never saw him coming. By the time you knew Marcus Valentine was interested in you, it was already too late. By 35, Marcus had gone legitimate. Mostly. He owned 4 car washes, 2 restaurants, a nightclub, and a real estate company. His money was clean now. His houses were clean. His suits were custom-made Italian silk. He lived in a mansion in Lincoln Park with 12 bedrooms, an indoor pool, and security that would make the Secret Service jealous. He had made it. He had climbed out of the South Side and into a world where people called him Mr. Valentine and smiled when they saw him coming. But the ghost of who he was never left him. It lived in his eyes. Cold. Calculating. Always watching. Marcus lived alone in that massive house. He had women, of course. Beautiful women who hung on his arm at charity galas and whispered his name in penthouse suites. But he never let anyone stay. Never let anyone close. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Love was a weakness he had eliminated from his life the same way he eliminated threats to his business, quickly and permanently. His house was immaculate, sterile almost. Everything in its place, everything controlled, just like his life. That's where Rosa Martinez came in. She was 42 years old, barely 5 feet tall, with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She had been cleaning Marcus's house for 3 years. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, she arrived at exactly 7 a.m., let herself in with her key, and worked in complete silence until 3 p.m. Marcus barely noticed her. She was part of the background, like the furniture or the art on the walls. He left her cash in an envelope on the kitchen counter every Friday. She took it and left. They maybe exchanged 20 words a year. That's how Marcus liked it. No complications, no connections, no vulnerabilities. Rosa was invisible to him, just another person doing their job. He didn't know she had 3 children. Didn't know she was sending money back to her mother in Honduras. Didn't know she worked 2 other houses after his, getting home at 9 p.m. every night to cook dinner for a husband who hadn't worked in 4 years. Didn't know she fell asleep every night praying for just one day where her body didn't ache and her heart didn't hurt. Marcus Valentine knew everything about his business, about his enemies, about every threat within a 50-mile radius. But he knew nothing about the woman who scrubbed his floors and organized his life. Nothing at all. Until one Wednesday morning in October when everything changed. It was 10:30 a.m. Marcus was in his home office on a conference call with his lawyers about a property acquisition in River North. Numbers, contracts, leverage points. The usual. Rosa was somewhere in the house doing whatever it was she did. He heard the vacuum running upstairs. Everything normal. Everything controlled. Then the call ended, and Marcus realized he needed his other laptop from the bedroom. He headed upstairs, his Italian leather shoes silent on the marble stairs. The vacuum was still running in the master bedroom. He pushed open the door. Rosa was bent over, vacuuming under the bed, her back to him. She was wearing her usual uniform, simple black pants and a gray polo shirt. But as she reached further under the bed, her shirt rode up slightly. And that's when Marcus saw it. A bruise. Dark purple, almost black, the size of a fist, on her lower back. Then another one, yellowing and older, on her ribs. His eyes, trained by decades of reading violence, caught more. A faded mark on her forearm, the way she moved carefully, like her ribs hurt. The slight limp he had never noticed before. Marcus froze. Something ancient and primal stirred in his chest. Something he thought he had buried years ago. He saw his mother coming home with that black eye, lying about the door. He saw every woman who had ever crossed his path with that same look in her eyes. That hollow, haunted look that said, "I am surviving, not living." Rosa turned off the vacuum and turned around. When she saw him standing there, she jumped slightly. Her hand instinctively went to her side, covering her ribs. "Mr. Valentine," she said quickly, her accent thick. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in. I'll finish this room later if you need." Her voice was apologetic, rushed. Always apologetic. Always trying to be smaller, quieter, less of a burden. Marcus's jaw tightened. He had seen that response before. In witnesses who wouldn't talk. In people who had been broken by violence so many times they no longer fought back. They just flinched and apologized and hoped the monster would move on to someone else. His voice, when he spoke, was quieter than usual, more controlled. But underneath, something was building. Something dangerous. "Rosa," he said, and she flinched at the sound of her name. He almost never said her name. "How long have you been hurt?" The question hung in the air. Rosa's eyes went wide, her hand pressed harder against her ribs. I'm fine, Mr. Valentine, just clumsy. I fell down the stairs last week. It's nothing." She was lying. Marcus had spent 20 years reading lies. He could spot deception from across a room in the dark. This wasn't just a lie. This was a practiced lie. One she had told before. Many times. To doctors, to neighbors, to anyone who asked. Her eyes darted to the door, calculating escape routes. Fight or flight. And she had chosen flight a long time ago. Marcus took a step closer. Rosa took a step back, her spine hitting the wall. That movement told him everything. No one who fell downstairs reacted like that. No one who had an accident flinched when someone moved toward them. Only people who had been hurt by other people moved like that. Only people who had learned that closeness meant pain. "Who did this to you?" His voice was still quiet. But now there was steel underneath. The kind of steel that had built an empire. Rosa shook her head rapidly. "No one, Mr. Valentine, please, I just—" Her voice cracked. She was terrified. Not of the injuries. She was terrified of him asking questions. "Does your husband know you're hurt?" Marcus asked, his eyes never leaving hers. And there it was. The tell. Her entire body went rigid. Her breathing stopped for just a second. Her eyes filled with tears, she immediately tried to blink away. Marcus had his answer. He didn't need her to say another word. Everything clicked into place. The way she always wore long sleeves, even in summer. The way she never took personal calls at work. The way she apologized for everything, even things that weren't her fault. The way she made herself invisible. This wasn't new. This had been happening for a long time. And no one had noticed. Or if they had, no one had cared enough to ask. "Rosa," Marcus said, and his voice had changed. It was softer now, but somehow more dangerous. "I need you to be honest with me. Is someone hurting you at home?" The tears Rosa had been fighting spilled over. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. For a moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice so small it was almost a whisper, she said, "Please, Mr. Valentine, don't ask me these questions. I need this job. I have children. Please." She wasn't denying it. She was begging him to stop asking, because the truth was more dangerous than the lies. The truth could get her killed. Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Not the cold, calculated anger he used in business. This was different. This was personal. This was the rage of that 8-year-old boy watching his mother lie about her black eye. The rage he had buried under layers of money and power and control. It was back. And it was demanding action. He walked to his nightstand, pulled out an envelope, and counted out $2,000 in cash. He returned to Rosa, who was still crying silently, trying to make herself smaller against the wall. Marcus held out the money. "Take this. Take the rest of the week off. Go see a doctor. A real one. Send me the bill." Rosa stared at the money like it was a weapon. "Mr. Valentine, I can't." "Yes, you can," he interrupted. His tone left no room for argument. "And Rosa? I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to tell me the truth. Who is hurting you?" She looked up at him, this small woman with tired eyes. And for a moment, Marcus saw his mother. Saw every woman who had ever been powerless against men who were supposed to protect them. Rosa's voice was barely audible. "My husband. Carlos." Marcus nodded slowly. He had expected it, but hearing it out loud made it real. Made it something he couldn't ignore. "How long?" 6 years, Rosa whispered. "Since he lost his job. He drinks now, gets angry, says I don't make enough money, says I don't respect him. I try, Mr. Valentine. I try so hard, but nothing I do is right." Her voice broke again. "Last night he pushed me into the table. I told the kids I tripped. They're 9, 11, and 13. They know. They see everything. But they don't say anything because they're scared too. We're all just scared. All the time." Marcus felt his hands curl into fists. He forced them to relax. Getting angry wouldn't help Rosa. He needed to think, to plan, to do what he did best, solve problems. But this wasn't a business problem. This was a human being standing in front of him, bleeding from wounds he couldn't see, asking him to stop asking questions because the truth was too dangerous. And for the first time in 20 years, Marcus Valentine didn't have a plan. He just had rage. And a decision. "Go home," he said quietly. "Pack a bag for you and your kids. Do it when Carlos isn't there. Can you do that?" Rosa's eyes went wide. "Mr. Valentine, what are you—" "Can you do that?" he repeated. She nodded slowly, confusion and fear mixing on her face. "Good. There's a hotel 3 blocks from here, the Riverside. Check in under the name Maria Gomez. I'll call ahead. They'll give you a suite, 2 bedrooms. Stay there tonight. I'll handle the rest." Rosa shook her head rapidly. "I can't just leave. Carlos will find me. He'll—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. But Marcus heard it anyway. "He'll kill me." That's what she was thinking. And she was probably right. Men like Carlos didn't just let their punching bags walk away. They escalated. They hunted. They finished what they started. Marcus had seen it 100 times in his old life. Domestic violence wasn't about anger. It was about control. And men who needed control didn't give it up without a fight. "Rosa," Marcus said, and something in his voice made her look up. "I need you to trust me. Just for today. Can you do that?" She looked at him for a long moment. This man who had been nothing but a paycheck and a house to clean for 3 years. This man whose hands she knew were not clean, whose reputation was whispered about in the neighborhoods she worked in. This man who had more power in his little finger than she had in her entire life. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Marcus handed her the money. "Go, now. The hotel is expecting you. Order room service. Rest. I'll call you tonight." Rosa took the money with trembling hands, stuffed it in her pocket, and left without another word. Marcus stood in his bedroom for a long time after she left, staring at nothing. His mind was already working, building a strategy. But this wasn't like his other problems. He couldn't just make Carlos disappear. Well, he could. That would be easy. 1 phone call and Carlos Martinez would be found in an alley with 2 bullets in his head and no witnesses. Marcus had done it before for less. But that wasn't justice. That was just more violence. And something told him Rosa needed more than revenge. She needed safety. She needed peace. She needed to rebuild a life, not just watch her abuser die. And for the first time in his adult life, Marcus wanted to give someone something other than fear. He wanted to give Rosa her life back. The right way, the hard way. The way that wouldn't turn him into the same kind of monster Carlos was. Marcus spent the rest of that day making calls. First, to his lawyer. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me." Quietly. Sarah Chen had been his lawyer for 10 years. She was brilliant, ruthless, and asked exactly 0 questions when Marcus needed her to move fast. "What do you need?" "I need a restraining order filed, today, against a man named Carlos Martinez. And I need it delivered by the police, not a process server. I want him scared." "Who's the victim?" A woman named Rosa Martinez. She works for me. She's being abused. There was a pause. Sarah had handled Marcus's business deals, his contract disputes, his property acquisitions. But this? This was new. Marcus, I've never heard you use the word abused before. You okay? Just do it, Sarah. I'll send you the details. And I need something else. I need housing. Permanent housing. 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood. Somewhere Carlos will never think to look. Can you find something by tomorrow? Another pause. You're not planning anything stupid, are you? Marcus almost smiled. Define stupid. You know what I mean. If Carlos Martinez turns up dead, you're the first person the cops will look at. He's not going to turn up dead, Marcus said. I'm not doing this the old way. I'm doing it right. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll have the restraining order filed in 2 hours and 3 properties for you to choose from by tonight. Anything else? Yeah. Find out everything about Carlos Martinez. Where he drinks, where he gambles, who he owes money to. I want to know every skeleton in his closet. On it. She hung up. Marcus made his second call. Tony. It's me. Tony Rizzo had been Marcus's head of security for 15 years. Ex-military, ex-cop, loyal to a fault. Boss, what's up? I need eyes on someone. Carlos Martinez. Lives in Pilsen. I'll text you the address. I want to know everywhere he goes, everyone he talks to, every move he makes, but I want it invisible. He can't know he's being watched. Who is he? Nobody. Just a piece of garbage I'm taking out. Tony knew better than to ask follow-up questions. You want me to handle it? By handle it, Tony meant the old way. The permanent way. No, Marcus said. I just need information. Nothing else. Not yet. Copy that. I'll have a team on him by tonight. Marcus hung up and made one more call. To the Riverside Hotel. This is Marcus Valentine. I'm sending someone to you tonight. Her name is Maria Gomez. Give her your best suite. Put everything on my account. And make sure your security knows she's there. If anyone comes asking for her, anyone at all, you call me first. Understood? Of course, Mr. Valentine. We'll take care of her. Marcus hung up and sat in his office, alone, staring at the city through his floor-to-ceiling windows. He had built an empire by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than everyone else. He had climbed out of poverty by doing things most people wouldn't dare. He had become untouchable. And now, for reasons he didn't fully understand, he was risking it all for a woman he barely knew. But as he sat there, he realized something. This wasn't about Rosa. Not really. This was about every woman who had ever been powerless. This was about his mother, who had died of a heart attack at 52, worn down by decades of working herself to death. This was about every person who had ever flinched when someone raised their voice. This was about 8-year-old Marcus, watching his mother lie about her black eye and feeling absolutely powerless to stop it. He wasn't 8 years old anymore. He wasn't powerless anymore. And Carlos Martinez was about to learn what happened when you hurt someone under Marcos Valentine's protection. But not with violence. Not with death. With something worse. With the complete and total destruction of everything Carlos thought made him a man. And Marcus was going to enjoy every second of it. That night Marcus called Rosa at the hotel. She answered on the first ring, her voice shaky. Mr. Valentine? How are you? He asked. It was the first time in 3 years he had asked her that question. The first time he had ever thought to ask. The hotel is beautiful. The kids can't believe it. They're eating room service and watching movies. They keep asking if this is real. Her voice cracked. Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't owe me anything, Marcus said. Did Carlos try to contact you? He's called 12 times. He's texted me saying if I don't come home tonight, he'll... She trailed off. He'll what? Marcus's voice was ice. He'll make me regret it. That's what he always says. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Block his number. Don't respond. Don't tell anyone where you are. Not your friends, not your family, no one. Do you understand? Yes, but Mr. Valentine, you don't understand. Carlos won't just let this go. He'll find me. He always finds me. Rosa, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Carlos Martinez is never going to touch you again. I promise you that. But I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say. Can you do that? There was a long silence. Then, yes. I trust you. The next morning, Carlos Martinez woke up with a hangover and a rage that had been building since his wife hadn't come home the night before. He had called, texted, even driven by her other jobs. Nothing. She had vanished. And that was unacceptable. Rosa belonged to him. She was his wife, his property. And she didn't get to just disappear without consequences. He was in his kitchen, drinking his third beer of the morning and planning all the ways he was going to teach Rosa a lesson when she came crawling back. When there was a knock at the door. Hard. Official. Carlos opened it to find 2 Chicago police officers standing on his porch. "Carlos Martinez?" The taller one said. "Yeah, what's this about?" "You're being served with a restraining order. Your wife, Rosa Martinez, has filed for protection. You are not to contact her, approach her, or come within 500 feet of her or her place of work. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Carlos's face went red. "What? She can't do that. She's my wife. Where is she? I want to talk to her." The officer handed him the papers. "Sir, if you contact her in any way, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" "This is bullshit," Carlos shouted. "She's turned my own kids against me. She's a liar. She fell down the stairs. I never touched her." The officers exchanged a look. They had heard this song before. Every abuser sang the same tune. "Mr. Martinez, we're just here to serve the order. If you have questions, contact the court. Have a good day." They left. Carlos stood in his doorway, holding the restraining order, his hands shaking with fury. Someone had helped Rosa do this. She was too weak, too stupid to have figured this out on her own. Someone had gotten in her head. And he was going to find out who. He was going to find Rosa. And he was going to remind her exactly who was in charge. But what Carlos didn't know was that from the moment he closed his door, he was being watched by professionals, people who made surveillance an art form, and everything he did from that point forward was being recorded, documented, and reported directly to Marcus Valentine. For 3 days, Marcus tracked Carlos's every move. The man was predictable. He went to the same bar every afternoon, drank until he was belligerent, complained loudly to anyone who would listen about his crazy wife who had stolen his kids. He drove by Rosa's former jobs, looking for her. He called her family in Honduras, demanding to know where she was. He even tried to file a missing persons report, but the police laughed him out of the station once they saw the restraining order. Carlos Martinez was spiraling, and Marcus was just getting started. On day 4, Marcus made a call. "Tony, I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "Carlos Martinez owes money to people, right?" "Yeah, boss. Guy's into a bookie for about 8 grand. Some loan shark in Cicero for another 5. "Why?" "I want you to buy his debts. All of them. Today. Pay double what he owes if you have to. I want to own Carlos Martinez's financial life by tonight." Tony was quiet for a moment. "You're not gonna hurt this guy, are you?" "No," Marcus said. "I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to make him irrelevant." By nightfall, Marcus owned every dollar Carlos Martinez owed to anyone. The bookie, the loan shark, even Carlos's landlord, who was 3 months behind on rent. Marcus bought it all, and then he called Carlos. The phone rang 4 times before Carlos answered. "Hello?" His voice was slurred. He'd been drinking. "Carlos Martinez? Who the hell is this?" "My name is Marcus Valentine. You don't know me, but I know you. I know you've been looking for your wife. I know you've been calling her family, driving by her jobs, making threats, and I'm calling to tell you that stops now." There was a pause. "Are you the guy helping Rosa? Where is she? I swear to God, if you don't tell me where my wife is, I'll—" "You'll what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. "You'll hit me? You'll push me into a table. Let me explain something to you, Carlos. I own you now. I own your debts. I own your apartment. I own every dollar you've ever borrowed and haven't paid back. And if you so much as think about Rosa or those kids again, I will destroy you. Not quickly. Slowly. I will take everything from you until you're living under a bridge with nothing but the clothes on your back. Do you understand me?" Carlos laughed, but it sounded nervous. "You can't do that. You don't even know me." "I know everything about you," Marcus said calmly. "I know you drink at Murphy's bar every day from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. I know you owe $8,000 to Jimmy Delano, $5,000 to Ray Cortez in Cicero, and 3 months of rent to your landlord, Mr. Hoffman. I know you haven't worked in 4 years. I know you live off your wife's paycheck and spend it on whiskey and losing bets. And I know that if you don't do exactly what I say, I will call in every single debt you owe, evict you from your apartment, and make sure no one in this city ever loans you another dime. You'll be homeless by the end of the week. Is that clear enough for you?" The line was silent. Marcus could hear Carlos breathing heavily on the other end. "What do you want?" Carlos finally asked, his voice smaller now. "I want you to sign divorce papers. I want you to give Rosa full custody of the kids. I want you to agree to never contact them again. And in exchange, I'll wipe out your debts. All of them. You'll walk away clean. You'll even get a job. A real one. I have a friend who needs someone at a warehouse. Night shift, 40 hours a week, $15 an hour. It's not much, but it's honest work. You'll be able to afford a studio apartment and start over. But if you refuse, or if you ever go near Rosa or those kids again, I will bury you so deep you'll wish I had just killed you instead. What's it going to be? Carlos was silent for a long time. Marcos could almost hear him thinking, weighing his options. Finally, and if I agree to this, she gets everything? She gets her life back, Marcus corrected. You get a second chance you don't deserve. Take it or leave it. Another long pause. Fine, I'll sign the papers. Smart man, Marcus said. A lawyer will contact you tomorrow. You'll sign, you'll start your new job Monday, and you'll forget Rosa Martinez ever existed. And Carlos? I'm going to be watching you for the rest of your life. If you ever raise your hand to another woman, if you ever even think about contacting Rosa, I will know, and I will end you. Not with a bullet, with something much worse. I'll make you nobody. Do we have an understanding? Yeah, Carlos said quietly. We do. Marcus hung up. He sat in his office, staring at his phone, feeling something he hadn't felt in decades. Not satisfaction, not power, something else. Something that felt almost like peace. He had just solved a problem without violence, without death, without adding more darkness to a world that already had too much, and it felt good. Better than any deal he had ever closed, better than any empire he had ever built. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus did something he had never done before. He actually got to know someone. Rosa came to his house once to thank him in person, and they sat in his living room and she told him her story. Not just the abuse. Everything. Her childhood in Honduras, her dreams of becoming a teacher, her journey to America, her hopes for her children. And Marcus listened. Really listened. For the first time in 20 years, he saw someone not as a transaction, not as a means to an end, but as a human being. A person with dreams and fears and a life that mattered. Rosa told him about her daughter who wanted to be a doctor, her son who loved drawing, her youngest who was obsessed with dinosaurs. She told him about the little things that made her happy. Coffee in the morning, her kids' laughter, the way the sun looked when it set over the lake. And Marcus realized something shocking. He had spent so long building walls, creating distance, staying untouchable, that he had forgotten what it felt like to just be human, to care about someone for no strategic reason, to help someone simply because it was the right thing to do. Marcus set Rosa up in a small but beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. He paid 6 months of rent up front and arranged for her to reduce her hours to just his house and one other so she could spend more time with her kids. He enrolled her children in a good school and paid for tutoring for her oldest daughter, who was struggling with math. He didn't announce it, didn't make a big deal of it, he just did it. Because for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Valentine was doing something that had nothing to do with power or control or reputation. He was doing something good, not because it benefited him, but because someone needed help and he had the power to give it. And as he watched Rosa rebuild her life, watched her kids smile again, watched the fear slowly leave her eyes, Marcus felt something shift inside him. Something fundamental. He wasn't the ghost anymore. Or maybe he was. But now he was haunting different people. Now he was the ghost that terrified abusers and protected the vulnerable. And that felt better than any empire ever had. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 months after Carlos signed the divorce papers and Rosa started her new life, Marcus received a phone call that changed everything. It was Rosa and her voice was frantic. Mr. Valentine, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I didn't know who else to call. It's Carlos. He showed up at the school today. He tried to take the kids. Marcus felt ice flood his veins. Did he touch them? No. The principal called the police and he ran. But Mr. Valentine, he looked different, angry. He was screaming that I had ruined his life, that he was going to take the kids and disappear, that I would never see them again. He violated the restraining order. The police are looking for him now. But I'm scared. What if he comes here? What if he hurts them? Marcus was already grabbing his keys. Where are you now? At my apartment. The kids are with me. We're locked inside, but Mr. Valentine, I don't feel safe. What if he... I'm 10 minutes away. Don't open the door for anyone but me. I'm sending security to you right now. You're going to be okay, Rosa. I promise. Marcus made 3 calls as he drove. First to Tony. Carlos Martinez just violated his restraining order and tried to kidnap Rosa's kids. Find him, now. And when you do, don't touch him. Just follow him and tell me where he is. Second call to his lawyer. Sarah, we need an emergency custody hearing. Today. I want those kids protected by more than just a restraining order. Third call to a number he hadn't dialed in 5 years. A detective he had once done a favor for. Detective Morrison, it's Marcus Valentine. I need a favor. When Marcus arrived at Rosa's apartment, he found her and the 3 kids huddled together on the couch. The oldest daughter, Sophia, had her arms around her younger siblings. They all looked terrified. Marcus had never felt protective of children before. He had never wanted any of his own. But seeing those 3 kids, seeing their fear, seeing how they looked at their mother for reassurance she couldn't give, something in him broke and rebuilt itself at the same time. Hey, he said softly, kneeling down to their level. My name is Marcus. I'm a friend of your mom's. And I promise you, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Okay? The youngest, Miguel, who was 9, looked at him with big brown eyes. Are you going to hurt my dad? The question hit Marcus like a punch. Because the truth was, yes, he wanted to hurt Carlos Martinez. Wanted to make him suffer for every bruise he had left on Rosa. For every nightmare these kids had lived through. For daring to show up at that school and terrify these children. But he looked at Miguel, at his innocent face, at the confusion and fear and love all mixed together. Because Carlos was still his father, and Marcus realized something. These kids didn't need more violence. They needed safety. They needed peace. They needed to know that the world had good people in it too. No, Miguel, Marcos said quietly. I'm not going to hurt your dad, but I am going to make sure he can't scare you anymore. Is that okay? Miguel nodded slowly, then surprised Marcos by reaching out and hugging him. This small boy who barely knew him, offering trust that Marcus didn't deserve. Marcus froze for a moment, then awkwardly patted the boy's back. He wasn't good at this. Wasn't good at softness or comfort or being the person people turned to for protection. But he was learning. Within the hour, Tony called. Found him, boss. He's at Murphy's bar, drunk off his ass, telling everyone who'll listen that he's going to get his family back. He's armed. I saw a gun tucked in his waistband. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Stay on him. I'm coming there. Rosa grabbed his arm. Mr. Valentine, please don't do anything that will put you in danger. You've already done so much. Maybe we should just leave Chicago. Start over somewhere else. Marcus looked at her. This brave woman who had survived years of torture and was still thinking about protecting others. Rosa, you're not running anymore. You've run enough. This ends today. Marcus drove to Murphy's bar with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He knew what he was about to do was risky. Knew it could blow up in his face. Knew it went against every instinct he had developed over 20 years of staying in the shadows. But sometimes the right thing and the smart thing weren't the same thing. And for once, Marcus was going to choose right over smart. He walked into Murphy's bar at 4:47 p.m. The place was a dive, the kind of bar where men went to die slowly, one beer at a time. Carlos was at the end of the bar, exactly where Tony said he'd be, gesturing wildly as he ranted to the bartender. She took everything from me, man. My kids, my house, my life. Some rich asshole is helping her, paying for lawyers and shit. What am I supposed to do? Just let her destroy me? The bartender, who looked like he'd heard this speech a dozen times already, just nodded and refilled Carlos's glass. Marcus walked up and sat down next to Carlos. For a moment, Carlos didn't notice him. Then Marcus said quietly, I'm the rich asshole. Carlos spun around, his eyes trying to focus through the alcohol. When he realized who Marcus was, his face went from confusion to recognition to pure rage. You ruined my life. You took my family. He reached for the gun in his waistband. But Marcus was faster. He grabbed Carlos's wrist with a grip like iron, stopping him before the gun even cleared his belt. Don't, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. There are cameras in here. There are witnesses. And if you pull that gun, you'll spend the next 10 years in prison. Is that what you want? To lose your freedom on top of everything else? Carlos's hand trembled. But he didn't pull the gun. Marcus continued, still holding his wrist. You came to your kids' school today. You scared them. You violated a restraining order. And now you're sitting here with a weapon, planning God knows what. Do you understand how this ends for you, Carlos? Do you? Carlos's eyes filled with tears. Angry, desperate tears. You don't understand, man. She was all I had. Those kids, they're my kids. What am I supposed to do now? I've got nothing. You took everything. No, Marcos said, releasing Carlos's wrist but not breaking eye contact. You took everything from yourself. I didn't put those bruises on Rosa. I didn't make your kids afraid of you. I didn't turn you into a man who solves his problems with his fists. You did that. All of it. And now you're sitting here, feeling sorry for yourself, blaming everyone else, planning to do what? Hurt more people? Scare your own children? Make everything worse? Carlos looked away, shame and rage fighting for control of his face. Marcus leaned in closer. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. I grew up watching my mother get hurt by men like you. Men who felt powerless, so they needed to make someone else feel more powerless. Men who thought control and love were the same thing. My mother died never knowing what it felt like to be safe in her own home. And I swore I would never let that happen to anyone else if I had the power to stop it. So here's what's going to happen, Carlos. You're going to give me that gun. Right now. Then you're going to go back to your apartment, and tomorrow morning, you're going to check yourself into rehab. A good one. I'll pay for it. 3 months, intensive, everything you need. And when you get out, you're going to get therapy. Real therapy. For the anger, for the drinking, for whatever broken thing inside you makes you think hitting women is acceptable. Carlos stared at him. Why would you do that? Why would you help me after everything I've done? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Because I've spent my entire adult life destroying people. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being the monster in other people's stories. And maybe, just maybe, if I help you become someone better, it'll balance out some of the darkness I've put into this world. Or maybe I'm just getting soft in my old age. Either way, this is your last chance, Carlos. Take it. Or I walk away and let the system handle you. And trust me, the system is not as generous as I am. Carlos sat there, tears running down his face, his whole body shaking. Finally, slowly, he reached into his waistband and handed Marcus the gun. I don't know how to be different, he whispered. I don't know how to be better. Nobody does at first, Marcus said. But you start by admitting you have a problem. And then you do the work, every single day. It's not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But it's the only way forward. Your kids don't have to forgive you. Rosa doesn't have to take you back. But at least you can become someone who deserves forgiveness, even if you never receive it. Can you do that? Carlos nodded, still crying. I'll try. I swear I'll try. Marcus stood up, pocketed the gun, and pulled out his phone. He called a facility he had researched earlier that day, knowing this moment was coming. This is Marcus Valentine. I'm sending you a client. His name is Carlos Martinez. I want him admitted tonight. Yes, I'll cover all costs. I'll have someone drive him there within the hour. He hung up and looked at Carlos. Someone will be here in 30 minutes to take you to the facility. Don't run. Don't drink anymore. Just wait. This is your chance to become the father your kids deserve. Don't waste it. As Marcus walked out of Murphy's bar, he called Rosa. It's done. Carlos is going to rehab. He won't be bothering you anymore. I made sure of it. Rosa's voice was thick with tears. What did you do? I gave him a choice, Marcus said. And surprisingly, he made the right one. Your kids are safe, Rosa. You're safe. You can breathe now. There was a long silence. Then Rosa said something that hit Marcus harder than any bullet ever had. You're a good man, Mr. Valentine. I know you don't think you are. But you are. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He had never been called good before. Powerful, yes. Feared, absolutely. Respected, definitely. But good? That was new. And it felt strange. Uncomfortable. Like wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. But maybe, just maybe, he could grow into it. That night, Marcus sat in his mansion, alone as always, but feeling different. Less empty. Less cold. He thought about Rosa and her kids, safe in their apartment. He thought about Carlos, hopefully beginning the long journey toward becoming someone better. He thought about his mother, gone 20 years now, and wondered what she would think of him. Would she be proud? Or would she see him as just another man using power to control others, even if he thought he was doing it for good reasons? Marcus pulled out his phone and looked at the picture Tony had sent him earlier. Rosa and her kids at the park near their new apartment, smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in who knows how long. Miguel was on the swings, his head thrown back in laughter. Sofia was reading a book on a bench, peaceful. The middle child, Javier, was climbing on the jungle gym, finally acting like the kid he was supposed to be. And Rosa was watching them, her hand over her heart, tears of joy on her face. This was what power should be used for, Marcus realized. Not to destroy, not to control, not to build empires of fear, but to protect, to heal, to give people back the lives that had been stolen from them. For the first time in 20 years, Marcus Valentine felt like he had done something that mattered. Not a business deal, not a territorial expansion, not revenge or justice or survival, just something good, something pure, something human. And it was terrifying, because once you start caring about people, you become vulnerable. You have something to lose. You open yourself up to pain and disappointment and heartbreak. But as Marcus looked at that photo, he realized something else. Being vulnerable, being open, caring about someone other than yourself. That wasn't weakness. That was the bravest thing a person could do. Especially someone like him, who had spent decades building walls so high that nothing could get in. Breaking those walls down? That took more courage than anything he had ever done in his old life. And Marcus Valentine was just getting started. 6 months passed. Carlos completed rehab and moved to a halfway house on the south side. He got a job at a construction company, started attending AA meetings, and saw a therapist twice a week. He didn't contact Rosa or the kids. He was honoring the agreement. Marcus checked on him occasionally through Tony's surveillance reports. The man was trying. Actually trying. It didn't erase what he had done, but it was something. And that was more than most abusers ever managed. Rosa, meanwhile, was thriving. She had gone back to school part-time, studying to become a licensed childcare provider so she could eventually open her own small daycare. Her kids were excelling in their new school. Sophia was getting straight A's and talking about college. Javier had joined the soccer team. Miguel was still obsessed with dinosaurs and had decided he wanted to be a paleontologist. They were becoming who they were always meant to be, before fear and trauma had stolen their childhoods. Marcus found himself stopping by their apartment once a week, usually on Fridays after Rosa finished work at his house. At first, it was just to check on them, to make sure they were safe. But then it became something else. It became the highlight of his week. Miguel would show him drawings of T-Rexes and tell him elaborate stories about dinosaur battles. Javier would talk about his soccer games with an excitement that was infectious. Sophia, quieter than her brothers, would sometimes sit with Marcus and tell him about the books she was reading, about her dreams of becoming a doctor, about how she wanted to help people the way Marcus had helped her family. And Rosa would make him coffee, real coffee, not the expensive stuff his chef prepared, but simple coffee made with love and gratitude. And they would sit together, this unlikely family, and Marcus would feel something he had never felt in his entire life. He would feel like he belonged somewhere, like he mattered for reasons that had nothing to do with money or power or fear. He mattered because he had chosen to be good, and that choice had saved lives. But Marcus's past wasn't done with him yet. Because in his old world, you didn't just walk away. You didn't just decide to be good and expect everyone to let you. There were debts. There were enemies. There were people who remembered the ghost and what he had been capable of. And some of those people were not happy about his transformation. It started with a phone call. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Marcus Valentine. The voice on the other end was smooth, dangerous. Ghost. Long time. Marcus felt his blood run cold. He recognized that voice. Vincent Calabrese, underboss of the Calabrese family, one of the most powerful crime syndicates in Chicago. Marcus had done business with them years ago, before he went mostly legitimate. They had an understanding. He stayed out of their territory, they stayed out of his. But he hadn't heard from them in years. Vincent, what do you want? I want to talk. Face to face. It's about your new hobby. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play stupid, Ghost. Word on the street is you've gone soft, helping housekeepers, sending wife-beaters to rehab, playing superhero. That's not good for business, Marcus. It makes people think you're weak. And when people think you're weak, they start getting ideas. Marcus felt rage building in his chest. I'm retired, Vincent. I'm not in the game anymore. What I do with my time is my business. See, that's where you're wrong, Vincent said, his voice hardening. You were one of us. And when one of us starts acting like a Boy Scout, it reflects badly on all of us. Makes us look like we can be redeemed, like we can go soft, and that's dangerous. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to meet me tomorrow night at the warehouse on West Kinsey, alone, and we're going to discuss your retirement plans, or maybe we'll discuss that housekeeper you're so fond of. Rosa, right? Pretty woman. 3 kids. Would be a shame if something happened to them. The line went dead. Marcus stood in his office, his hands shaking with fury. This was his worst nightmare. His past coming back to threaten the people he cared about. He had spent 6 months learning to be human again, learning to care, learning to be vulnerable. And now that vulnerability was being weaponized against him. He had two choices. He could go back to being the ghost, handle Vincent the old way, and protect Rosa and her family with violence and fear. Or he could try something different, something he had never done before. He could ask for help. Marcus made a call. "Detective Morrison, it's Marcus Valentine. Remember when I said I might need that favor? Well, I need it now." 2 hours later, Marcus was sitting in a coffee shop with Detective James Morrison, a 15-year veteran of the Chicago PD and one of the few honest cops Marcus had ever met. They had an unusual relationship. 5 years ago, Marcus had given Morrison information that helped him take down a human trafficking ring. Morrison had never asked where Marcus got the information, and Marcus had never asked for anything in return. Until now. "Vincent Calabresi just threatened me," Marcus said quietly. "More specifically, he threatened Rosa Martinez and her family." Morrison whistled low. "Calabresi, that's heavy. What did you do to piss him off?" "I stopped being a criminal," Marcus said with a bitter smile. "Apparently that's bad for their image. So what do you want me to do? I can't just arrest Vincent Calabresi because he made a phone call." "I don't want you to arrest him," Marcos said. "I want you to help me protect Rosa and her kids. I want police presence at their apartment, at their school, everywhere they go. And I want wire authorization. I'm meeting Vincent tomorrow night. I'm going to get him on tape threatening civilians. And then you're going to arrest him for conspiracy and witness intimidation." Morrison stared at him. "You're going to wear a wire against Vincent Calabresi? Do you have a death wish?" "Probably," Marcus admitted. "But I'm tired of solving problems with violence. I'm tired of being afraid of my past. And I'm tired of people thinking they can threaten innocent people to get to me. So yes, I'm wearing a wire. And yes, I'm going to get Vincent Calabresi arrested the legal way. Because if I handle this the old way, I'm right back where I started. And I can't go back there. Not now. Not after everything." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, I'll help you. But Marcus, you need to understand something. Once you do this, once you testify against Calabresi, you're done in that world. They'll put a price on your head. Every criminal in Chicago will be gunning for you." "Good," Marcus said. "Let them come. I've spent 20 years being afraid of what would happen if I stopped being a monster. Maybe it's time to find out what happens when I choose to be brave instead." The next 24 hours were the longest of Marcus's life. Morrison arranged for plainclothes officers to watch Rosa's apartment and the kids' school. He got wire authorization from a sympathetic judge who had lost his sister to gang violence and was happy to help take down Vincent Calabresi. And Marcus spent the time getting his affairs in order, just in case. He wrote letters. One to Rosa, explaining everything. One to his lawyer, with instructions for his estate. One to each of Rosa's kids, telling them to stay in school, to dream big, to never let anyone make them feel small. And one to his mother, even though she was gone, telling her he was finally trying to be the man she had wanted him to be. He wasn't sure he'd succeed, but he was trying. And that had to count for something. The next night, Marcus drove to the warehouse on West Kinsey. He was wearing a wire under his shirt, and he knew Morrison and his team were positioned around the perimeter. But he was still walking into a meeting with one of the most dangerous men in Chicago, alone, with nothing but a recording device and a hope that the law would actually protect him for once. The warehouse was dark, abandoned for years. Marcus walked inside, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. Vincent Calabresi was waiting for him in the center of the room, flanked by two large men in expensive suits. Vincent himself was in his 50s, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the kind of calm that came from knowing you could order someone's death with a phone call and sleep peacefully that night. "Ghost," Vincent said, spreading his arms. "Thank you for coming. Let's skip the pleasantries, Vincent. You threatened Rosa Martinez and her children. That was a mistake." Vincent smiled, cold and reptilian. "Was it? See? I think the mistake was yours, Marcus. You thought you could just walk away from this life. But you can't. Once you're in forever. That's the rule." "I'm not in anymore," Marcus said. "I've been out for years. You know that." "But people remember," Vincent said, circling him slowly. "People remember the ghost. People remember what you were capable of. And when they see you playing daddy to some housekeeper's kids, helping wife beaters, going soft, it makes them think maybe they can go soft too. And we can't have that. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear. Move to another city, another state. I don't care. But you're going to stop this Good Samaritan routine in Chicago. Or I'm going to make sure Rosa Martinez and her children disappear. Permanently. And if I refuse? Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady. Vincent's smile disappeared. Then I'll kill them myself. And I'll make you watch. I'll make sure the last thing you see before I put a bullet in your head is those 3 kids bleeding out on the floor. Do we understand each other? Marcus felt rage boiling in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He needed Vincent to keep talking, needed him to be explicit. You're threatening to murder children because I'm trying to be a better person? Do you hear how insane that sounds? It's not about the kids, Vincent snapped. It's about respect. It's about maintaining order. You were one of the most feared men in this city, Marcus. And now you're what? A babysitter? A social worker? It's pathetic. And it's dangerous. So yes, I'm threatening those kids. And I'll follow through if you don't do exactly what I say. There it was. Clear, explicit, on tape. Marcus took a breath. I'm not leaving Chicago, Vincent. And you're not touching Rosa or her family. I'm done taking orders from people like you. Vincent's face went dark with rage. You arrogant! He never finished the sentence. The warehouse doors burst open, and Morrison and 6 other officers stormed in, guns drawn. Chicago PD, nobody move. Vincent Calabresi, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and witness intimidation. Vincent's face went from rage to shock to understanding in seconds. He looked at Marcus, at the wire now visible under his shirt. You're wearing a wire? You wore a wire to meet with me. I told you, Marcus said quietly. I'm not that person anymore. Vincent lunged at him, but the officers were faster. They tackled him to the ground, cuffed him, read him his rights. Vincent was screaming obscenities, threatening everyone, promising revenge. But it didn't matter. They had him on tape. He was done. Morrison walked up to Marcus. You okay? Marcus nodded, though he was shaking. Yeah, I'm okay. You did good, Marcus. Really good. We've been trying to get Calabresi for years. This recording is going to put him away for a long time. Marcus watched as they dragged Vincent out of the warehouse, still screaming. He had just crossed a line. He had just become a snitch, an informant, everything the criminal world hated most. There would be consequences. But as he walked out of that warehouse and called Rosa to tell her she was safe, really safe now, Marcus realized something. He didn't care what the criminal world thought of him anymore. He cared what Rosa thought, what her kids thought, what he thought of himself when he looked in the mirror. And for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Valentine could look in the mirror and see someone worth saving. The trial took 8 months. Marcus testified against Vincent Calabresi, played the recording in open court, and watched as the man who had tried to murder children for the sake of respect was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. But the cost was high. Marcus had to go into protective custody for 3 months. His businesses were vandalized, his cars were torched. There were 2 attempts on his life, both thwarted by Morrison's team. Word spread through Chicago's underworld. Marcus Valentine was a snitch. The ghost was dead, and there was a price on his head. $50,000 to anyone who could take him out. Marcus knew he could fight back the old way. He still had connections, still had resources, still had the skills that had made him the ghost. But every time he thought about picking up the phone and handling it with violence, he thought about Miguel showing him dinosaur drawings, about Sophia telling him she wanted to be a doctor, about Rosa making him coffee and treating him like he was more than his past. And he chose differently, every single time. Instead, Marcus worked with Morrison and the FBI. He gave them information on money laundering operations, on corrupt officials, on every dirty secret he knew. And one by one, they took down the people who were trying to kill him. Not with bullets, with badges. It took a year, but eventually the price on his head was removed. Not because people forgave him, but because the people who had put it there were in prison. And the ones who remained realized that going after Marcus Valentine meant going after someone who had the entire Chicago PD and the FBI protecting him. It wasn't worth it. The ghost had become untouchable again, but for completely different reasons. During that year, something else happened. Something Marcus never expected. His relationship with Rosa and her kids deepened. He started having dinner with them every Friday. Not because he was checking on them, but because they invited him, because they wanted him there. Miguel still showed him dinosaur drawings, but now Marcos actually knew the names of the dinosaurs. Javier told him about his soccer games, and Marcos started showing up to watch. Sophia talked to him about her college applications, and Marcos wrote her a recommendation letter that made her cry. And Rosa. Rosa became his best friend. The first real friend he had ever had. They would sit on her tiny balcony after dinner, drinking coffee, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her dreams, her fears, her past. And slowly, carefully, Marcus told her about his mother, about the projects, about the choices he had made and the things he had done. He expected judgment, expected her to see him as a monster. But instead, Rosa took his hand and said, "You were trying to survive. We all do what we have to do to survive. But what matters is who you choose to be when survival isn't enough anymore. And you chose to be good, Marcus. You chose to protect me and my kids when you didn't have to. That's who you are, not the things you did, but the person you chose to become." Marcus had never cried in front of another person, not since he was 8 years old. But that night, on Rosa's balcony, he cried. And she held him while he did. This small woman who had survived her own hell, offering comfort to a man who had caused so much pain in the world. And Marcus felt something he had never felt before. He felt forgiven, not absolved, not excused, but forgiven. And that made all the difference. 2 years after Marcus first saw the bruises on Rosa's back, he was standing in a high school auditorium, watching Sophia walk across the stage to accept her diploma. She was valedictorian. She had been accepted to Northwestern University on a full scholarship. She was going to be a doctor, just like she had always dreamed. And when she gave her speech, talking about resilience and second chances, and the people who had saved her life, she looked directly at Marcus and Rosa. "My mother taught me that strength isn't about never falling down," Sophia said, her voice clear and strong. "It's about getting back up every single time. And there's someone else who taught me that it's never too late to change, to be better, to choose kindness over cruelty. That no matter what you've done in your past, you can still decide to be a hero in someone else's story. To that person, thank you. You saved my family. And now I'm going to spend my life saving others, just like you saved us." Marcus felt tears running down his face and didn't bother to wipe them away. Rosa squeezed his hand, and Miguel, sitting on his other side, leaned against him. This was family, Marcus realized. Not blood, not obligation, but choice. They had chosen each other. And that was more powerful than anything Marcus had ever built with fear or money. After the ceremony, Marcus pulled Sophia aside. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You've worked so hard for this." Sophia smiled, then surprised him by hugging him tight. "I couldn't have done it without you. You gave us a life, Marcus. A real life. And I'm never going to forget that." "You would have made it anyway," Marcus said. "You're brilliant, Sophia. You always were. I just helped clear some obstacles." "No," Sophia said, pulling back to look at him. "You did more than that. You showed me that good people exist. That there are people who will stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And that changed everything for me. I want to be that person, Marcus. I want to be the one who saves people the way you saved us." Marcus didn't know what to say. He had spent so much of his life being the villain, being the monster, being the thing people feared. And now this brilliant, beautiful young woman was telling him he was her hero. It didn't feel real, but it was. That night, Marcus took Rosa, Sophia, Javier, and Miguel out to dinner at the nicest restaurant in Chicago. They laughed and told stories and celebrated Sophia's future. And as Marcus looked around the table at these 4 people who had somehow become his family, he realized something. He had spent 20 years building an empire of fear, trying to prove he was powerful, trying to make sure no one could ever hurt him again. But power hadn't made him happy. Power hadn't made him whole. This did. This family that wasn't really his family. These Friday dinners. These soccer games and dinosaur drawings and college applications. This was what life was supposed to be. Not control, not domination, but connection, love, purpose. And it was worth more than every dollar he had ever made. But the story wasn't over yet. Because 2 weeks after Sophia's graduation, Marcus received a letter. It was from Carlos Martinez. Marcus almost threw it away without reading it. He hadn't heard from Carlos in nearly 2 years, not since he had sent him to rehab. As far as Marcus knew, Carlos was living in a halfway house, working construction, staying sober, and staying away from Rosa and the kids. That was the deal. But curiosity got the better of him, and he opened the letter. It read, "Mr. Valentine, you don't know me anymore, and that's probably for the best. But I wanted to write to you because I've been sober for 672 days now. And in AA they tell you that you have to make amends to the people you've hurt. I can't make amends to Rosa or the kids yet. Maybe I never will. That's their choice, and I have to respect it. But I can thank you. You gave me a choice when you could have just killed me. And I think about that every day. You were a gangster, a criminal, someone who probably should have just gotten rid of me the easy way. But you didn't. You gave me a chance to be better. And I'm trying, Mr. Valentine. I'm really trying. I have a job. I have an apartment. I go to therapy twice a week. I volunteer at a men's shelter, talking to other guys who have anger problems, who hit their wives, who are where I was. And I tell them the same thing you told me. It's not too late to change. I don't know if Rosa will ever forgive me. I don't know if my kids will ever want to see me again. And I've accepted that. But I'm becoming someone who deserves forgiveness, even if I never receive it. Just like you said. So thank you. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving when I couldn't see it myself. You changed my life. And because you changed mine, I'm changing others. That has to count for something. Sincerely, Carlos Martinez. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he showed it to Rosa. She read it silently, tears streaming down her face. What do you think? Marcus asked gently. Rosa was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I think people can change. I think Carlos is trying. And I think maybe someday when I'm ready, I might be able to forgive him. Not forget. Never forget. But forgive. Because holding on to hate is exhausting, Marcus. And I'm tired of being exhausted. I just want peace. Do you want to see him? Marcus asked. No, Rosa said firmly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hope he keeps trying. I hope he becomes the man he should have been from the beginning. Not for me. For himself. Because everyone deserves a chance to be better. Marcus nodded. He understood. Forgiveness wasn't about the person who did wrong. It was about the person who was wronged, choosing to let go of the anger that was poisoning them. Rosa had every right to never forgive Carlos. But she also had the right to choose peace over vengeance. And whatever she chose, Marcus would support her. That was what real power looked like. Not control, but support. Not domination, but standing beside someone and letting them make their own choices. Marcus had learned that lesson the hard way, but he had learned it. And it had changed everything. 3 years after Marcus first saw the bruises on Rosa's back, he stood in Rosa's apartment, now redecorated and filled with photos of her kids' accomplishments, and asked her a question he never thought he would ask anyone. Rosa, I've been thinking, and I know this might sound crazy, but would you and the kids want to move in with me? The mansion is too big for one person. And I hate coming home to an empty house. You could have your own wing. The kids could have their own rooms. Miguel could have space for all his dinosaur stuff. Javier could have a yard to practice soccer. And Sofia could have a quiet place to study when she's home from college. You wouldn't have to clean anymore. You'd just be family. Because that's what you are to me. Family. And I know I'm not good at this. And I know I'm still figuring out how to be a normal person. But I'd like to try. With you. With them. If you'll let me. Rosa looked at him with tears in her eyes. Marcus Valentine, are you asking me to move in with you? Yes, Marcus said. I know it's unconventional. I know we're not married or anything. But I care about you and those kids more than I've ever cared about anything in my life. And I want to spend whatever time I have left making sure you're all safe and happy and have every opportunity you deserve. So yes, I'm asking you to move in with me. As family. What do you say? Rosa walked over to him, took both his hands in hers, and looked up at him with those tired eyes that had seen so much pain but still held so much hope. Marcus, 3 years ago, I was broken. I was living in fear every single day. I couldn't see a future for myself or my children. And then you saw me. Really saw me. You saw past the housekeeper, past the bruises, past everything, and you saw a human being worth saving. You gave me back my life. And now you're asking if I'll share yours? The answer is yes, 1,000 times yes. Because you're not just my employer, Marcus. You're not just my friend. You're the person who taught me that there are still good people in this world, that there are still heroes. And I would be honored to be your family. They moved in 2 weeks later. Miguel claimed the room with the best view for his dinosaur collection. Javier turned the backyard into a soccer field. Sofia had a beautiful room with a desk where she could video call from college. And Rosa had her own suite, decorated exactly how she wanted it, with a balcony where she and Marcus could sit every evening and drink coffee and talk about their days. The mansion, which had once been cold and empty and sterile, came alive. It filled with laughter and arguments and homework and soccer balls bouncing down hallways, and Miguel's excited screams when he learned a new dinosaur fact. Marcus had to learn how to be a real person, how to have family dinners, how to help with homework, how to attend parent-teacher conferences, how to negotiate bedtimes and allowances and screen time. It was chaos, it was messy. It was nothing like the controlled, orderly life he had lived for 40 years. And it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. One night, about 6 months after they had moved in, Marcus was sitting in his office going over some paperwork when Miguel knocked on the door. "Mr. Marcus, can I ask you something?" Marcus smiled. The kids still called him Mr. Marcus, even though he had told them 100 times they could just call him Marcus. "Of course, buddy. What's up?" Miguel came in and sat in the big leather chair across from Marcus's desk, his feet dangling off the ground. "My teacher asked us to draw a picture of our family for homework. And I drew Mom, and Sophia, and Javier, and I drew you too. Is that okay?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Miguel, of course that's okay. I'd be honored to be in your family picture." Miguel looked relieved. "Good. Because you're family now, right? Even though you're not my real dad, you're still family?" Marcus got up, walked around the desk, and knelt down so he was eye level with Miguel. "Miguel, family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who cares, who stays, and I'm not going anywhere, not ever. So yes, I'm family, if you want me to be." Miguel nodded seriously. "I want you to be. You're way better than my real dad anyway." Then, with the brutal honesty of a 9-year-old, he added, "My real dad hit my mom. You protect her. That makes you more of a dad than he ever was." Marcus didn't know what to say. He just pulled Miguel into a hug, and this little boy who had seen too much violence and fear in his short life hugged him back with a strength that belied his size. "I love you, Mr. Marcus," Miguel whispered. And Marcus, this man who had spent 40 years building walls around his heart, who had convinced himself he didn't need love, who had destroyed lives and built empires and become a ghost, whispered back, "I love you too, buddy. So much." It was the first time in 30 years that Marcus Valentine had said those words to anyone, and he meant them with every fiber of his being. That night, after Miguel went to bed, Marcus showed Rosa the drawing. It was a crayon masterpiece, stick figures of all 5 of them standing in front of a house, smiling, holding hands. Above it, in Miguel's messy handwriting, it said, "My family." Rosa looked at it and started crying. "Marcus, do you see what you've done? Do you see how you've changed our lives?" "You've changed mine too," Marcus said quietly. "I spent so long thinking power was the most important thing. That control, that fear, that being untouchable, that was success. But this?" He gestured to the drawing. "This is what success actually looks like. Not money, not empire, but being someone's hero, being someone's family, being loved by people who know exactly who you are and choose to love you anyway. You gave that to me, Rosa. All of you did." Rosa took his hand. "We saved each other, Marcus. That's what family does." And she was right. They had saved each other. Marcus had given Rosa and her children safety, opportunity, and hope, and they had given him something even more valuable. They had given him purpose. They had given him humanity. They had taken a ghost and made him real again. 4 years after Marcus first saw those bruises, Sophia graduated from Northwestern with honors. She was accepted into one of the best medical schools in the country. Javier got a full soccer scholarship to a Division I school, and Miguel, at 13, was already talking about going to college to study paleontology. Carlos Martinez was 5 years sober, working as a counselor at a rehab facility, helping other men unlearn violence. He had never tried to contact Rosa or the kids again, respecting the boundaries that had been set. But he was changing lives in his own way, breaking cycles of abuse, becoming the man he should have been from the beginning. And Marcus Valentine sold most of his businesses and started a foundation, the Second Chance Foundation, dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence. They provided housing, legal services, therapy, job training, and childcare. They helped women and children escape dangerous situations and rebuild their lives. In the first year, they helped over 200 families. In the second year, over 500. Marcus funded it all. Every dollar he had once made from questionable sources was now going toward helping people who needed it most. He still had his mansion, still had security, still had some of his old connections. But he used them differently now. He used his power to protect, not to destroy. He used his money to build, not to control. He used his reputation to scare abusers into leaving their victims alone, not to intimidate business rivals. The ghost was still there, But now he haunted different people. Now he was the monster that monsters feared. And that felt right. People started calling him Marcus Valentine, the redeemed gangster, the man who changed, the proof that it's never too late. He became a symbol of transformation, of second chances, of the possibility that even the darkest souls could find their way to the light. But Marcus didn't care about the fame or the recognition. He cared about the lives he was saving. He cared about the women who called the foundation hotline at 2 a.m., terrified and desperate, and got help instead of judgment. He cared about the children who got to grow up without fear, who got to dream, who got to become who they were meant to be. He cared about being someone Miguel could look up to, someone Sofia could be proud of, someone Javier could trust, someone Rosa could lean on. That was his legacy now. Not fear, not money, not power, but love, protection, family. And for a man who had once been called the Ghost, who had once been untouchable and alone and convinced he was beyond redemption, that legacy was worth more than every empire he had ever built. Because Marcus Valentine had learned the hardest lesson of all, that real strength isn't about never being vulnerable. It's about choosing to be vulnerable anyway. Real power isn't about controlling others. It's about giving others the freedom to choose. And real success isn't about what you take from the world. It's about what you give back. Marcus had taken so much in his life. He had hurt people, destroyed lives, left scars that would never fully heal. He couldn't undo any of that. But he could spend every day for the rest of his life trying to balance the scales, trying to put more good into the world than he had taken out. And maybe, just maybe, by the time he took his last breath, the good would outweigh the bad. That was the hope he held on to. The hope that redemption wasn't about erasing your past. It was about choosing differently in your present. About being brave enough to change when change seemed impossible. About looking at the worst parts of yourself and deciding that those parts didn't have to define you anymore. Marcus Valentine was proof that it was never too late. That you could spend 40 years being one kind of person and still choose to become someone completely different. That the most powerful decision anyone could make was the decision to be good, even when being good was harder than being bad. And as Marcos sat on the balcony of his mansion, watching Miguel play soccer in the yard, watching Rosa tend her garden, watching the sunset paint the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and crimson, he thought about how far he had come. From a boy in the projects watching his mother get hurt, to a gangster building empires on fear, to a man standing in a warehouse wearing a wire, to a father figure holding a 9-year-old boy and saying, "I love you," for the first time in 30 years. It had been a long journey, a painful one. A journey filled with mistakes and regrets and blood that could never be washed away. But it had led him here, to this moment, to this family, to this peace, and that made every hard choice, every sacrifice, every terrifying step into the unknown worth it. Because Marcus Valentine had finally found what he had been searching for his entire life. He had found home. 10 years after Marcos first saw the bruises on Rosa's back, he stood in a hospital waiting room, pacing. Sofia was inside, delivering her first baby. She had married a fellow doctor 3 years ago, a good man who treated her with the love and respect she deserved. And now she was about to become a mother herself. Marcos couldn't sit still. He had faced down mob bosses, survived assassination attempts, testified against some of the most dangerous men in Chicago. But this? Waiting for his chosen granddaughter to be born? This was more terrifying than anything he had ever experienced. Rosa sat calmly in the corner, knitting. She had become his anchor over the years, the steady presence that kept him grounded. Javier was there too, now a professional soccer player, taking time off from his season to be there for his sister. And Miguel, now 19 and studying paleontology at the University of Chicago, was reading a textbook about prehistoric marine life, completely unfazed by the chaos around him. This was his family. Unconventional, chosen, built from pain and trauma and the conscious decision to be better. And it was perfect. Finally, after what felt like hours, Sofia's husband emerged with tears streaming down his face. It's a girl. 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Both mom and baby are healthy. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. Rosa grabbed his hand, and they walked into the delivery room together. Sofia was holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink blankets, her face glowing with exhaustion and joy. "Marcus," she said softly, "meet your granddaughter, Emma Linda Valentine Rodriguez." Marcus froze. You gave her my last name?" Sofia smiled. "Of course I did. You're her grandfather. And Linda was your mother's name, right? You told me about her once." How she worked herself to death trying to provide for you. How she never got to see you succeed. I wanted to honor her. And you. Because you gave me the life that made this moment possible. Marcus walked over slowly, afraid he might break something with his clumsy hands. But Sophia placed little Emma in his arms without hesitation, trusting him completely. Marcus looked down at this tiny human, this brand new life, and felt something crack open in his chest. This baby would never know violence, would never know fear, would never have to wonder if she was safe in her own home. Because Marcus would make sure of it. Because Sophia would make sure of it. Because this family, this beautiful, broken, rebuilt family, would make sure of it. "Hello, Emma," Marcus whispered. "I'm your grandpa, and I promise you, you're going to have the most amazing life. You're going to grow up safe and loved and surrounded by people who would do anything for you. You're going to dream big and achieve those dreams, and you're never, ever going to be afraid. Because that's what families do. We protect each other, we lift each other up, and we make sure the next generation has it better than we did." Emma opened her eyes, impossibly blue, and looked at him. And in that moment, Marcus Valentine understood why he had survived everything he had survived, why he had walked away from the life, why he had worn that wire, why he had chosen to be vulnerable and scared and human. It was for this moment, for this child who would grow up free from the cycles of violence and fear that had defined so many generations before her. He was breaking the cycle. And it had all started with noticing bruises on a housekeeper's back and choosing to care about them. One choice. One moment of deciding that someone else's pain mattered more than his comfort. That's all it took to change everything. Rosa came up beside him and looked down at Emma. "She's beautiful, Sophia. Absolutely beautiful." Sophia smiled. "She's going to change the world, Mom. I can feel it." "She already has," Marcos said quietly. "Just by being here. Just by being proof that good things can come from bad situations. That love can grow in the darkest places. That families can be built from choice instead of blood." They stood there together, this family that shouldn't exist by any logical standard. A former gangster, a domestic violence survivor, 3 kids who had grown up in terror, and now a brand new life that represented hope and healing and the possibility of something better. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was real. And Marcus wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in the hospital chapel. He wasn't religious, hadn't been to church since his mother dragged him there as a child. But he felt the need to sit in quiet reflection, to think about the journey that had brought him here, to all the choices, good and bad, that had led to this moment. He thought about his mother, Linda, who had worked herself to death so he could have a chance. He thought about 8-year-old Marcus, watching his mother lie about her black eye, feeling powerless and angry and determined to never be powerless again. He thought about the ghost, the monster he had become in his quest for power, all the people he had hurt, all the lives he had destroyed, all the darkness he had put into the world. And then he thought about Rosa, standing in his bedroom with bruises on her back, apologizing for existing. He thought about the decision he had made in that moment to help her instead of ignore her. And how that one decision had cascaded into everything that came after. The rehab, the wire, the testimony, the foundation, the family, Emma. All of it started with one choice: to see someone else's pain and decide it mattered. "I don't know if you're listening, Mom," Marcus said quietly to the empty chapel. "I don't know if there's anything after this. But if there is, if you can hear me, I want you to know I'm trying. I'm trying to be the man you wanted me to be. I know I failed for a long time. I know I became exactly what you were afraid I'd become. But I'm different now. I have a family, real family. People who love me not because of what I can do for them, but because of who I've chosen to be. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure they're safe and happy and have every opportunity I never had. I'm going to break the cycle. For them. For you. For that little girl in there who's just starting her life. I'm going to make sure she grows up in a better world than the one you and I knew. That's my promise. That's my redemption. And I'm going to keep it. No matter what." He sat there in the silence, feeling lighter than he had in years. He couldn't erase his past. Couldn't bring back the people he had hurt or undo the damage he had done. But he could choose differently going forward. Could build something good from the ashes of who he used to be. Could be proof that transformation was possible, even for people like him. Because if Marcus, the ghost Valentine, could become a grandfather, a protector, a man who babies were named after, then anyone could change. Anyone could choose redemption. It was never too late, never impossible, never beyond reach. It just took one choice, one moment of courage, one decision to care about someone other than yourself. That's all it took to start. And then you just kept making that choice over and over every single day, until one day you looked around and realized you weren't the person you used to be anymore. You were someone new, someone better, someone who could look at themselves in the mirror and not hate what they saw. Marcus walked out of the chapel and back to Sophia's room. His family was there, all of them crowded around the bed, passing Emma around, taking pictures, laughing, planning the future. Rosa saw him and smiled, motioning for him to join them. Miguel was showing Emma his phone with dinosaur pictures, already trying to indoctrinate his niece into paleontology. Javier was making faces trying to get her to smile. Sophia and her husband were glowing with exhaustion and joy. And Marcus stood in the doorway for just a moment, watching them, memorizing this scene. Because this was success. This was victory. Not money or power or fear or control. But this love, this family, this proof that even broken people could build something beautiful if they just tried hard enough. Marcus Valentine had spent 40 years being the monster in other people's stories. But he had spent the last 10 years being the hero in a few people's stories. And he would take the latter over the former any day of the week. Because being loved, being trusted, being someone's grandpa, that was worth more than any empire he had ever built. That was the real power. The power to change lives not by destroying them, but by protecting them. The power to break cycles instead of perpetuating them. The power to be someone that little children could look up to without fear. That was the power Marcus Valentine had been searching for his entire life. And he had finally found it. Not through violence, not through control, but through one simple choice to care about a woman with bruises on her back. One choice that had changed everything. For her kids, for him, for the tiny baby sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms, unaware that she was the culmination of a journey that had started in darkness and ended in light. Marcus walked into the room, and Rosa made space for him next to her. He sat down, and she leaned against him, comfortable and safe. This woman who had once flinched when he approached was now seeking his presence, his protection, his love. That transformation alone was worth everything he had sacrificed to get here. "What are you thinking about?" Rosa asked quietly. Marcus looked around the room at his family, then down at Emma, who was being cradled by Sophia. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am, how I don't deserve any of this, how I should have died in an alley somewhere, just another gangster who got what he deserved. But somehow, by some miracle, I got a second chance, and I got to meet you. And I got to be part of this incredible family, and now I get to be a grandfather to that beautiful little girl. I'm thinking about how grateful I am that I saw those bruises 10 years ago. Because if I hadn't, if I had just ignored them like I ignored everything else that didn't affect me directly, none of this would exist. I would still be alone in that mansion, rich and powerful and completely empty. So I'm grateful. For all of it. For every hard choice, every scary moment, every time I wanted to go back to the old ways but chose differently instead. Because it led me here. To this, to you, to them, to her." Rosa smiled and squeezed his hand. "You saved us, Marcus. But we saved you too. That's what families do. We save each other." And she was right. They had saved each other. In every way that mattered. Marcus Valentine had learned the most important lesson of his life. That the only thing that truly lasts, the only thing that really matters when you're at the end of your journey, is not what you took or what you built, or how much power you wielded. It's who you loved and who loved you back. It's the lives you touched in positive ways. It's the people who remember you not with fear, but with gratitude. It's knowing that when you're gone, you'll leave behind something good. Something that will continue to grow and spread and make the world just a little bit better. That was Marcus's legacy now. Not the ghost, not the gangster, not the criminal, but the man who chose to change. The man who saw suffering and decided to end it. The man who broke cycles of violence and started cycles of healing. The man who proved that it's never too late to choose redemption. And as Marcus sat there, surrounded by his family, holding his granddaughter for the first time, he realized something profound. This was the moment he had been fighting for his entire life. This peace, this love, this belonging. He had just been looking for it in all the wrong places. He had thought power would give him safety. That money would give him worth. That fear would give him respect. But none of those things had ever filled the emptiness inside him. Only love had done that. Only family. Only the conscious choice to be vulnerable and human and good. So to anyone out there who thinks they're too far gone, who believes their past defines their future, who is convinced that redemption is impossible, Marcus Valentine's story is proof that you're wrong. It's never too late. It's never too far. You are never beyond saving. It just takes one choice, one moment of courage, one decision to see someone else's pain and decide it matters. And then you make that choice again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of your life. Until one day you look around and realize you're not the person you used to be anymore. You're someone new, someone better, someone who can hold a baby without fear that your darkness will somehow contaminate their light. Because here's the truth that Marcus learned. Darkness can't contaminate light. Light contaminated darkness. Every time. Without fail. You just have to be brave enough to let the light in. To let people see the worst parts of you, and trust that they might still choose to love you anyway. To believe that you deserve redemption even when you're absolutely certain you don't. That's the hardest part, not changing, but believing you deserve the chance to change. Marcus Valentine believed it. And because he believed it, he became it. And now, holding his granddaughter, surrounded by the family he had chosen and who had chosen him back, Marcus Valentine could honestly say he had no regrets. Not about leaving the life, not about wearing that wire, not about choosing vulnerability over strength, because all of those choices had led him here, to this moment, to this love, to this peace, and that more than any empire, more than any amount of money or power or fear, was worth everything. That was the true meaning of redemption, not erasing your past, but building a future so bright that your past becomes just shadows in comparison. And Marcus Valentine's future was blinding.